In November 2010, the U.S. promised return all of 46,000 Inca artifacts kept by Yale University to Peru. Those artifacts were supposed to be returned after 18-month-long research, but it took as long as a century to be returned to the owner. Weak and impoverished country, Peru. Nevertheless, its noble spirit remained intact. Not even the U.S. with its mighty power could harm it. The noble spirit was manifested in the burning desire of the Peruvian government and its people, the desire to repatriate what used to belong to their ancestors. Egypt pioneered this global movement. Egypt has retrieved 200,000-year-old relics from the Stone Age kept by London University in 2010. In addition, it has also reclaimed a mural excavated from a tomb nearby, the Valley of the Kings from France. Over the past 8 years, Egypt has retrieved 31,000 displaced cultural treasures from abroad. China has formed a task force team to take stock of the actual conditions of its cultural artifacts looted by the US, the UK, and France. China's State Administration of Cultural Heritage plans to request governments in question for the official restitution of its cultural properties based on such research results. The global movement on the restitution of stolen cultural properties has become increasingly massive. The number of displaced cultural treasures confirmed thus far reach as many as 74,000 pieces for Korea. However, the number only includes those kept in museums and exhibition centers. There will be many more such treasures if privately owned cultural properties are included, and it is difficult to locate these properties. However, only 5,000 Korean cultural properties have been returned to Korea for the last 6 years. The number is significantly less than 31,000 of Egypt during an 8-year period and 46,000 of Peru. In 2010, Japan agreed to return 1,205 Korean ancient books. Uigwe will be one of the books. It is a collection of historical documents from the Joseon dynasty. It kept records of major ceremonies and rites conducted for coronations of a king, installations of the crown prince, and weddings of the royal, in all paintings and writings with great details. However, even though Koreans had hoped for the return of Korea's cultural treasures and requested it of Japan, regrettably, treasures of significant cultural importance were not on the restitution list Japan arbitrarily offered. Currently, as many as 60,000 pieces of Korean cultural properties are in Japan. The return of 1,200 ancient books is only the beginning. France also promised to return all the 298 books of the royal archives known as Waegyujanga. They were taken away from Korea when France invaded Gangwon Island and plundered the books in 1866. France had rejected every request of the Korean government for the return of the books. The agreement to return the books is an achievement of 19-year-long negotiations with France. It took as many as 145 years since the books were stolen. Among the displaced Korean culture artists overseas, the oldest movable metal type printed book of 직지 심체 요절 is on top of the agenda. 직지 was ferried to France from Seoul at the end of the 19th century by Clément de Plancy, the then French ambassador to Korea. Today it is in the hands of the National Library of France. 직지 was printed in 1377. And the antedated 42-line Bible printed by Gutenberg's metal typeset by 78 years. In 1990, at the World Exposition in Paris, 직지 was revealed to the world for the first time in existence. The oldest book was a great surprise to the world, and the history of printing was rewritten since the inventor was no longer in the West but Korea. Many of the world's renowned press have all chosen the movable metal type printing as the greatest invention in the history of human culture over the past millennium. And in 2001, 직지 was listed on UNESCO's Memory of the World. For Koreans, 직지 is one of the greatest cultural heritage along with Hangul and 거북선. France, however, refused not only to return 직지, but also to return on lease. Meanwhile, France has retrieved all its cultural objects looted by Germany after the First World War by taking legal actions. This reveals the hypocritical side of France. Now it is time for France to make a decision befitting its pride in being a nation with sophisticated culture. There are 4 different categories of cultural objects to be returned. First, cultural objects stolen during the war. Second, cultural objects excavated or taken illegally. Third, cultural objects transferred during colonial times or foreign invasions. Fourth, cultural objects whose ownership has been changed, as in the case of the Soviet Union, where one nation is divided into many states. UNESCO adopted the Convention on the Means of Prohibiting and Preventing the Illicit Import, Export, and Transfer of Ownership of Cultural Property. This was achieved at the 16th UNESCO General Assembly held in 1970. The convention applies to the second category of cultural objects excavated or taken illegally. What is unfortunate is that it is not retroactive. As for cultural objects transferred during colonial times, there's no binding agreement in the world at the moment. In addition to voluntary donation or purchase of the cultural properties, the only way to deal with the issue is negotiations between the governments concerned. In order to retrieve displaced cultural properties from abroad, actions must be taken. First, an organization of scholars and experts should be established to accurately identify the status of displaced cultural assets. Second, specific rationales should be available when demanding the return of looted cultural assets through a thorough historic analysis. Third, the government and related entities should take the lead and make every effort for the restitution of cultural properties. Fourth, efforts must be made to raise awareness among the people of nations the looted cultural assets of Korea, that the cultural assets should be returned. Fifth, efforts must be made to raise the global awareness on stolen cultural properties. and a global movement calling for the return of such properties must be carried out on a long-term and consistent basis in collaboration with nations such as Egypt, India, Greece, and China, the victims of lost treasures. Sixth, the retrieved cultural objects require delicate care. There should be follow-up measures such as designation of the retrieved as national cultural treasures according to each value. Young members of the Cyber Diplomatic Organization (VANC) identify the origin of cultural properties displaced overseas. They have made efforts to raise awareness on local communities that have rightful ownership of such items. They also sent letters to each cultural properties administration, urging them to retrieve what should be theirs. Inspired by their efforts, each cultural properties administration now makes vigorous efforts to demand countries holding the Korean cultural objects in question to be returned. The Cyber Diplomatic Organization (VANC) interacts with students and teachers worldwide online. By doing so, it tries to persuade the world that such properties are Korea's treasures, signifying the spirit and the soul of Koreans, and what they should be returned to Korea since they are part of the Korean history. The duty of returning and retrieving displaced cultural properties is a global commitment as well as an obligation that must be honored. This must be honored by the people in the developed world if they have conscience, if they cherish culture, if they pursue universal values of the mankind.